All right, welcome to the ONS podcast, where we sit down with multiple elite athletes, dissect their mentalities, their habits, their nutrition, and what drives them. Today on the show, we have Morgan Alley. If I could use one word to describe Morgan, it would be curious. And he seems to excel at anything that he puts his mind to. Early on in his career, he started as a professional BMX rider, competing in freestyle. Then moved on to music, playing drums for multiple bands all over the world. Now he has switched his efforts to becoming an elite calisthenics athlete, and he is on his way. The one thing I know about Morgan is that he has an insatiable thirst for knowledge and pushes not only his body, but his mind every day. Morgan, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, man.
Awesome. So I was excited to bring you on the show today because there's a million things that we can talk about. We've known each other for a very long time, so I don't even know where to start. Where would you like to start? You were telling me this morning that you were shooting some sort of marathon, and so we started to talk about that a little bit. So, what were you doing?
Well, I have a friend who ran in the marathon in Sarasota this morning, and he asked me to come out and take some photos. Just one of those little side hobbies that I've always enjoyed. I agreed to do it, and it was a lot of fun. He came in fourth, which was amazing, out of a few thousand. And so
you said he was running like how many minute miles? Like what was his average pace?
6. I don't remember. He's gonna see this, and it was like I think it was like 6:15 average or something stupid, like
over 27 miles or whatever.
It was was just an incredible. It was really cool to watch because I grew up riding BMX with him.
Okay, and
we were both sort of degenerate kids together, and it's really cool to see, and we put everything we had into BMX, and that was sort of a foundation for us. And it's really cool to see him kind of come out of that and put his efforts into something else like this, and to see him do that was really cool.
Well, that's essentially what you do. I've seen you do it time and time again. We've known each other for about 9 years, I think.
Yeah,
pretty close to it.
Yeah,
and every time I see you, whatever it is, you're definitely hyper focused on whatever it is that you are striving for. And so we met each other playing music together. That was a good friend of ours, Ryan, introduced us, and ever since then it's been a really good relationship. But music, that's where I met you.
Yep.
So I mentioned in your intro that you've played music a couple of times for different bands, like touring bands and stuff like that. So kind of talk about your progression from, focusing from BMX, you were playing BMX and drums at the same time, but what made you stop doing BMX and going more full-time into music?
Well, so I started riding. So in a nutshell, I started riding BMX when I was young, middle school, maybe something like that. And, that progressed pretty heavily. Like you said, I become very hyper-focused on whatever I'm involved in. Yeah. And that's sort of a double-edged sword a little bit. So I was doing that, and music came along, I don't know, maybe about the same time I sort of found drums, and I was really torn all growing up. It was like these two different lives that I was like trying to, and it was almost, it was not sustainable, right? Because I would get hurt riding BMX and I couldn't play drums, and trying to pursue both of those things are just two different worlds. Yeah. And BMX was, I sort of grew up in a really interesting time for BMX where, in that world, all of a sudden, you had, like these crazy advancements in freestyle BMX where these really young kids were coming into the game and things that weren't possible before, like front flips and triple back, all these crazy, like sort of,
like a 10-year-old would come out and just stomp you guys because he was light and agile and just knew what he was doing.
Right. They were really pushing the limits. Right. And I was getting a little bit older, and I had been hurt a few times, and had been doing some competing, but it was just kind of one of those things where music started to show some promise for me, and BMX was just kind of one of those fun hobbies. So I came at a crossroads where I had to make a decision on which one I was going to pursue. Right. And music was the one I chose. So I kind of took off with that and toured playing in some different bands, and was able to tour quite extensively, and we signed with a label and did the whole thing. And
you were in 2 bands, correct, that were signed, technically? Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were two different genres, really. I mean, you had like the metal band that you were in, which that's one of the first shows I actually saw you at was at a metal show.
Oh, really?
you were just this kid on the drums with shirt off, bunch of tattoos, and just playing these ridiculous beats. I mean, metal is incredibly, like, that's like a really good workout on the drums.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just drenched in sweat by the time you're done.
Yeah.
And so I just remember seeing you, and it was at a smaller show. So you were actually on the floor. Like, there was really, the stage was so small that they couldn't put the drums on there. So you were like in the front on the floor where the crowd was. And so like, I just remember seeing like people like crash into your drum set.
Yeah.
What kind of energy is that? Like, I mean, those shows have an insane amount of energy. I played in a metal band for like 6 months, and we never played out.
Right.
And I was exhausted by the time, like, the end of our practices. So what kind of energy was that? Like, what was it like being in one of those bands?
I mean, to sum it up, it's just chaos.
Right.
Like it's just all chaos. And you don't really know what's going. You're just honestly just beating the piss out of these drums. Like, you are just taking out all of your darkness on these things. And that's what I loved about it. There's no dynamic to it, or very little. You know, a lot of it is just hard hitting, fast paced. And that was what I wanted when I was younger. You know, there was no dynamic. There was no subtlety to it, or very little. It was a lot of technique, but as far as dynamics went, it was just loud and aggressive and in your face. And that's what, you know, and the energy was reciprocated from the crowd as well.
Right.
So,
well, that was the best part about metal shows is like the energy you feel from a crowd is unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Yeah. So that was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed my time. And it was funny because, you know, we played that music, but none of us, we all listened to, like, you know, Coldplay. None of us listened to metal music. So
okay.
Like,
I didn't expect that one.
Yeah. None of us really listened to that music. Like, but we loved to play it.
Right.
And that transition out of like hardcore music really happened when, you know, I started to appreciate the subtleties behind music, and my taste started changing. You know, after listening to all these things for so long, you know, I really found a lot of joy in the subtlety behind it. You know, like learning like these a little like subtle techniques playing drums instead of just fast paced, like in your face, hard hitting. Yeah, exactly.
All the time.
Yeah. So that was my transition into like more of an electronic pop sound.
Right.
With the other act that I was playing with.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know you didn't want to bring it up, but I'm going to bring it up anyway.
Oh no.
There was a time that I knew you that you kind of reluctantly told us that you were playing with a band out of LA, two girls. I think we can say their name, Official Hot Mess. And that was a pretty wild ride. You went from, you know, this, you know, completely different world in metal, which you guys were playing like pretty big shows, but you weren't doing like these like super elaborate, like high production, like music videos and hanging out with different celebrities and that kind of stuff. And so you flew over to LA and you were playing with this band that it was a connection that you had, that their guitarist you knew, and he was like, you got to come play.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Okay, so I'll sum this up shortly.
There's some really good stories in there I want to get to.
So that was a fairly reckless time of my life, and that the experience with Official Hot Mess was short but sweet, and so yeah, we flew out to LA. They had me fly out there. So there was another drummer, but he ended up leaving the band or whatever, and they flew me out to LA. And it was one of those, like, I don't really know how to describe it. It was everything you would imagine going out to Los Angeles with a very wealthy family. And so they put us up in this penthouse and they gave us this black card and they kind of just like told us to do whatever we wanted as long as we showed up. So we were there to shoot a music video with some famous director. I don't even know. But we took full advantage of that. I don't know how long we were out there, 5 days or something like that. Not much of it. I don't remember much of it, but It was a lot of fun, and we had some really, really cool experiences. Their mother was affiliated with Playboy.
Okay.
And so she was very good friends with Hugh Hefner, and we sort of got to interact with him. And so
did
really...
did you get to go to the...
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
The Playboy
yeah,
Mansion?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was everything you would imagine. I mean,
Right.
that guy truly, he lived the life that he talked about. It was insane.
It wasn't just a show.
No,
Like, this is
no.
literally his day, every day.
That was his day.
Interesting.
Yep.
And what was that like?
I mean, he always had like, you know, his like classic robe on, and like he just had this elaborate mansion with a bunch of girls in the house, and always had parties. And we went there for like a party, and it was like an event or whatever. And their mother was a Playboy model in the 70s. And they had just stayed in touch or whatever. And I think their father was like a pitcher for the LA Dodgers or something. So they
wow.
grew up,
Yeah.
you know, around fame and things like that.
Right.
And so it was weird. It was really weird because, I mean, she knew him like, I know you, you know? So being there was, it was a trip, man. It was a real trip.
What was it like experiencing? So you hear all these stories about like, you know, these rock stars and the life that they live, especially in LA. So it sounds like you got to live that life for like a couple weeks. And what were your takeaways from that?
It's most certainly not it's most certainly not as glamorous as people imagine it. I mean, I suppose it is in a sense, like, you know, when you think about like partying and things like that. I mean, that was it, you know, that's exactly what it was, you know, it was everything you sort of imagined. But on the back end of things, you know, it was just, it was a really empty life, you know. It was nothing that I really wanted a part of.
Yeah.
I found that weekend. I was kind of like, it was fun and I had my moment, and like, but it just wasn't for me. It just wasn't my thing.
Yeah. I know as a musician, like, you kind of grow up, I started, you know, playing music when I was 16. So you kind of grow up like glamorizing that kind of lifestyle. Like, I just want to be a touring musician. I want to move to LA or Nashville and play music and party and go on tour and do all of that. And I remember just in our conversations, when you were doing that, like literally like when you were about to start touring, you're like, I don't want to do anything but tour. Like that's all I'm focused on.
Right.
Is like, I don't care if I'm in a glamorous RV touring the country or I'm in a van sleeping in the back seat. Like, all I want to do is tour. And I feel like you did it, and it wasn't what you wanted. Is that true?
So parts of it are true. The touring aspect was unbelievable. I mean, I got to tour the country and see things that I never would have seen otherwise, you know, and just go to places that, you know, I never would have been. You're in a different city every night. So there's something really nice about it. And I really enjoyed that part of it. I think that the thing that I didn't expect and that I didn't see coming and all of that, and honestly, like, was one of the biggest like blessings for me, coming out of that, was I really, really, and this is the double-edged sword part about being so involved in what you're doing, is that I really wrapped my identity up in that whole thing. And I really lost myself in that whole thing. And I remember it was midway through this tour, and it was the tour that we had sort of dreamed of. It was sold out shows every night. We're playing to thousands of people. I mean, it was everything you can imagine a tour would be, that you would want. And I remember halfway through it, just feeling so empty. And I couldn't figure out, you know, what was going on. I didn't understand. Like, everything was right in front of me. Like, this whole thing was, I was experiencing everything that I had worked for since I was a kid. Right. And that was a real moment for me, where I really had to take some time and figure myself out. Yeah. You know, that was like one of the first times where I really, really, I had to sit with myself and for years, like, it took a long time. It was a long process to sort of, pull the layers back behind all of these things. And,
especially as someone who, you said that your identity is so wrapped up into this. So when you peel it away,
it hurts.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
And so you said you sat with that for a couple of years of just trying to really find yourself. Were you playing music in that time though?
I was. So we were still playing music and we were still doing it. And again, like I said, I loved playing. The shows were super fun. I really loved that. But I think, to be completely transparent, the vanity of all of it, was really tough to digest. It was something that, it was so unexpected that I would get caught up in that.
Right.
And that's what I mean by like my identity. Like I became this thing. Like I didn't even know who I was without this,
right.
Without being behind this title. So I was hiding behind, who I was in that space. And that is, I think it's a really great way to be as a representative for your brand and things like that. But it can leave you just completely soulless, and I struggled with that, and I had to find out what it meant to pursue something without my identity attached to it. And that was tough for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, where did that leave you?
Well, so that sort of transitioned me. I left the band, and so this is sort of my transition into my calisthenics journey.
Yeah.
So touring all the time, I had always been involved with diet and fitness, and I've always been fascinated by those worlds. But it's never been, I've always kind of kept it to myself. It's nothing I ever showcased.
Yeah, that was actually one thing that, our friend Ryan was like, dude, Morgan knows a ton about nutrition and working out, but you never talked about it. It was like all of a sudden one day Ryan's telling me, yeah, he's like into all these podcasts. He reads all these books. Like and you're in the best shape of your life. And at that point I hadn't seen you in a couple of years because you were off touring and stuff like that. Right. And that's absolutely true. You just kind of kept it to yourself. You were holding out on us a little bit.
It was something that I'm not sure why. I guess it was, and we've had conversations about this, off the podcast, but, the climate of like physical fitness and exercising and gym life and all of these things, it was nothing that I ever really wanted to attach myself with. I always leaned towards art. I always leaned towards the creative side of things.
Right.
And that world just, I don't know, it was something that I just didn't identify with. But over time, the climate has slowly changed, to, instead of, focusing more on overall health and wellness, longevity,
right.
and those are things that I can get behind.
Right.
I really enjoyed that side of it. So I suppose the conversation just didn't really exist back then.
Right.
And so I just kind of kept it to myself. And,
that was also a time for me, like when I was just wanting to be as big and bulky and bodybuilder as I possibly could. And obviously I'm not like that now, but you're much more talking about like, that's why obviously calisthenics was a much more digestible avenue for you to take your fitness journey.
Yeah. So calisthenics was, calisthenics came from, not having the ability to have a gym, honestly. Like I was,
because on the road,
because I was
nothing.
touring.
Yeah,
so everything was just body weight training all the time. So every day I would just take some time. I'd go find whatever park, whatever city we were in, I'd go find a park or whatever. And hopefully I'd find a pull-up bar or something like that. And I would just push-ups and pull-ups and, core strength and things like that.
Did you have a good like foundation as far as like what you were going to do as far as your workout routine? Or did you kind of just like go on YouTube and just did you have like a natural like ability to just know like, okay, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do that? Or were you like searching online, like calisthenics workout? Like how did that all come to be? Because I've literally gone to a park to try to do this stuff and I do like pull-ups and I'm like,
now what?
What do I do?
Yeah. So a couple things. So I was doing this before I knew what calisthenics was. I didn't know
the word
that
for
term,
it. Yeah.
Right. And what actually got me started, funny enough, was I was home and my friend was doing a P90X workout. You remember P90X?
Yeah.
That,
oh yeah.
That like, yeah.
Yeah. I used to do the ab ripper X.
Yes, exactly.
That was the
Yes.
worst 13 minutes of my life. Yeah.
So that is honestly, that was sort of my catalyst into bodyweight training.
Okay.
So
yeah, because that's P90X is all body weight, correct?
all of it. Yeah.
I don't think I only did the ab part because
Okay.
we had like bootlegged it or
Yeah.
no, we didn't. We had somebody let us borrow it,
Yeah.
but we only had the ab one. We didn't have the rest of it. So
Right.
So it was just all body weight, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I suppose it was that, and then like you said, just looking things up on YouTube.
Yeah.
Push up variations, pull up variations, just trying to find things. And it was so funny because there was just nothing out there for those sorts of things, except for like, someone putting their phone on their desk and being, and it was like, real choppy and low quality and things like that.
Right.
But calisthenics is really a movement that's pushing, and it's pushing over from the United Kingdom and Europe and things like that. It's big over there, and it's pushing over this way. But now you can go on and you can find, things like ThenX or
Right.
these really well branded, beautifully displayed sort of representations of calisthenics,
Right.
which is really cool.
Yeah, that's been like over the last like just few years, really.
Yeah, it's new.
Has the culture always been there? Like, has it, especially in the United States? Like, I know you said that it's more over in like England, but like, has there been a big calisthenics culture here, just kind of in the background, not really being publicized too much, or is this really kind of taken off in the last few years, and more people are just trying to be a part of it?
I think it's new.
Is it?
I think so. I'm sure there was like some subculture out there that was doing it, But as far as it being broadcasted pretty widely and pretty widely accepted, I think it's a fairly new thing over here, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
It's new to me anyway.
Yeah. And so you said what got you more attracted to that was the fact that was it because it was more functional and more, like, would you say, quote unquote, healthy than just going in and doing a bunch of weightlifting and trying to get as big as possible? Like, what was more appealing to that other than just the non-availability? Because in most cities you can find a gym.
Right.
If you really wanted to, you could find a gym.
Right.
What attracted you more to that?
Well, it was the availability. So free is cheaper than whatever. And
some of these gyms are like $15.
Yeah,
for a day
right.
pass. That's ridiculous.
And being on tour, you're counting your pennies, sort of thing. So free was always a great option. And then, what really drove me to calisthenics, if I can rewind for a minute, I'll tell you a funny story. When I was young, I couldn't have been more than, I don't know, 8. Real young. I was sort of pushed into this to playing on a baseball team.
Okay.
And this was my first experience with sports.
Really?
Really young kid. And my uncle had known the coach of this team, and I was 7, but all the other kids were 12 and 13. And it was, the coach was one of those guys who was sort of vicariously living through his son, and his son was like the star player of the team. And he was this 13-year-old cool kid. And so I was benched most of the time. I was on there, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was just a little scared kid. And so finally, one game, they let me go up to bat. It was my first time, and they gave me a tee. And nobody else was using a tee, but they put a tee up there for me because I was little. And
nice.
So I hit the ball. The ball, rolls over to the pitcher or whatever, and I start running. And you have coaches on the bases and things. And,
right.
And I start running, and I'm running, and I'm running, and I look up, and I'm looking at the base coach, and he's telling me no, and he's screaming no, and I don't understand what's going on. And come to find out, I'm running to third base. And they're like screaming no, And so I just sit down and start crying.
Yeah. Just right there on the baseline.
Just right there.
Yeah. Okay.
And the coach is furious.
Yeah.
And like, being at that age, you're so impressionable at that age. Yeah. And I honestly think that that's what drove me to pursue things like BMX, these individual sports. And so leading all the way back to calisthenics, I love with calisthenics that it's highly individual, like you can do it by yourself. You can do it anywhere. You can spend as much or little time as you want doing it in any sort of area. And what I really love about it is that is the same thing I loved with BMX is that it's more goal. It's not goal oriented. It is goal oriented, but I mean it's you're more focused on skill development than you are with just like pushing more weight. Right. You know, like when you start to learn like, you know, muscle ups and back levers and planches and things like that, it's a lot more technique and skill than it is just muscling through something and just sort of pushing more weight. Yeah. And I love that. Like I love having this thing that like, it's like learning a trick with BMX. Like you fail and you fail and you fail and you fall and you're not strong enough and you don't have the technique and you don't have it right. And then you finally get it. Right. And that's like what I live for. Like I love that. Right. So that I think that was a big driver for me with calisthenics. Yeah, I like that because you know, as a guy who's been in the gym, it's like 7 years now. Yeah. You know, you can do bench press with a 45-pound bar, or you can do it with 315 pounds on it. But some of the stuff you're talking about, you can't do that unless you really, really, really work at it. Right. And I've seen your videos. Like it scares the shit out of me to try to try some of that stuff. I'm like, I'm gonna snap my arm. Like, there's no way. I can barely do like 10 pull-ups right now. I'm working on my pull-ups. Cool. You know, I read David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me. And that's when we were talking about the marathon earlier, like I have such a drive to try to do a marathon now because I mean, if you've never heard of David Goggins, you've heard of David Goggins. Oh, yeah. You've heard him on podcasts and you've read his book. And this guy's like an ultra marathon runner, and he is just absolutely insane as far as in every sense of the word. Yes. He's a Navy SEAL. He went through BUD/S 3 times. He's the world record holder for pull-ups, ultra marathon runner, ran 100 miles on 2 broken feet. And every time I hear his voice, I feel like a bitch. Yeah. There's like, you know, I'm just like, I'm complaining about running 3 or 4 miles. And here's a guy that ran 100 miles with 2 broken feet. Right. And so like, and he does pull-ups. I mean, he's doing hundreds of them at a time. So now every time I'm trying pull-ups, I hear David Goggins' voice in my head, just going and going. And so now I want to do a marathon, and I'm really trying to train for that. So it started with 5Ks. Now I'm doing 10Ks, just on multiple times a week, just trying to build up my endurance and bring the time down as far as per mile. And you were mentioning that you were wanting to do that too. Yeah. I think we should train together. All right. I'm perfect. In. Was it David Goggins that made you want to do that? Well, my friend has been trying to get me to run marathons with him for, I don't even know how long. And the hard part for me to commit to marathon running is the training is, I mean, it's so time consuming. Yeah. And
you can't get a quick training in for a marathon. Exactly. Like I can go to the gym for 30 minutes and get a quick train in. Right. Like you can't do that for...
Right. So there will be a day where I will commit to running, and I would love to do... So when I do it, my first marathon's most certainly going to be the New York Marathon, if I can do it. Yeah, like I want to qualify, and I want to get in there, and I want to like...
What's the qualification for that?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I know they have like a... what do they call it? Like a lottery that you can enter every year, nice. and you can get chosen for that.
So you have to like have like a specific resume as far as what you've done in the past, you know, time, miles, and that kind of stuff.
I believe so. Okay. Yeah. So that's kind of my goal. One day, like I'm going to run that marathon. And,
that'd be cool.
Yeah. Make some time, hopefully. Yeah.
It's a lot of miles though.
I know.
It's a lot of miles.
I can sprint, but I can't run. Man.
That's where I can't sprint or I can't run. That's my problem. My main problem with running is I can't run. Yeah. You know, it's hard, but I like it. Yeah. It's a new challenge, and I've done everything that I wanted to do in the gym, and now I see this as a new fun challenge. But pull-ups for sure. So I want you. I think in one of our new like upcoming ONS videos, I'd really like you to take me through like a calisthenics workout.
Cool. I'd love to, man. Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah. I think that'd be good. Yeah. I think that'd be good. So what is your, switching gears here a little bit, what does your diet look like?
Ooh, diet. So currently, I've done a lot of self-experimenting with diet over the years. Nice. And I've found that I spent time vegetarian, and I spent a little bit of time even doing like the carnivore diet. I spent a little bit of time,
just complete
dude,
opposite ends of the
I've been
spectrum.
everywhere.
Okay.
Ketogenic. I mean,
Right.
just paleo, whatever. And what I found that works for me is honestly just a whole foods balanced diet.
Yeah.
I do really well with carbs. I handle carbs really well. So I'll put a lot of sweet potatoes in my diet, a lot of vegetables, and a good amount of meat. And
What was life like on, let's go through some of those diets. Like when you were a vegetarian, were you full vegan or did you just go vegetarian? Like
just vegetarian.
just vegetarian. Okay. Yeah. So what was life like on that? Like where did you see your body? How did you see your body reacting?
So, well, when I went vegetarian, that was by far my least favorite diet. I felt weak. I felt malnourished. My cognitive performance was low. I did not enjoy, a vegetarian diet. And before we get too far, like I'm no expert. There's no recommendations that I'm making for anybody. And I think
but you've done a lot of
anecdotal.
time. Yeah,
Exactly.
a lot of research and you've experimented a lot of things.
Right.
So vegetarian, you didn't like.
Yeah, it didn't work for me.
It didn't work for you.
No.
Were you doing any sort of like blood work during like in between all of these just to kind of see how your levels were coming along? Or
I did not do that for when I was vegetarian. I didn't put any blood work in.
Okay.
I did when I was ketogenic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And with ketogenic diet, my cognitive performance was through the roof. Like I felt so sharp mentally, but I didn't have the energy. The lack of carbs and things like that, where it just killed me. It drained me of my energy. And there was actually a reason why I went on the ketogenic diet. So we were shooting a music video at the time, and I wanted to look emaciated for this music video. So I lost 38 pounds.
You lost 38 pounds?
Yeah, I was 126 pounds for this music video.
I think I remember this music video.
Yeah, it was sick.
Yeah, I thought you had gotten cancer or something. It was bad. I was like, oh, wow, he is starving himself. Okay.
Yeah, so
38 pounds.
Yeah.
From where you are now or at the time?
At the time.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I was just sick looking, completely sick looking. And so I was doing 2-a-days with sprint intervals, 2-a-days. I was on a calorie deficit like crazy. And
Were you tracking a lot of your calories on the ketogenic diet? So yeah, because you have to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, you're supposed to be under like 50 grams or less of carbohydrates and trying to get specific amounts of fat and protein.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was a brutal one, man.
Yeah.
It was a commitment. I got the keto flu really bad. Like that's like
What's the keto flu? I've never heard of that.
So the keto flu is typically a temporary like sick feeling that you get a couple weeks into the ketogenic diet. So you'll do the ketogenic diet and you start to feel some shifts, and then you'll get what's called the keto flu for most people. And some people don't get it, but a lot of people get it. It's just a flu-like symptom that you have, and you just feel like death. You just feel like death. And that's why a lot of people they'll commit to the keto flu, they'll commit to the keto diet,
right.
And they'll get the flu,
yeah.
And they bail,
right?
Because it's just not for me.
Yeah, they're like, I feel like shit. Like, there's just no way I'm going to continue with this. It's not for me.
So if you ask somebody, if you ask an expert or something, they'll say, push through that, and it'll eventually go away for most people, and you'll sort of level out, and your energy will come back, and you'll lose
What is
that.
the reasoning for that? Do you have like some sort of like explanation? Do they have like an explanation of why people go through that?
I'm sure someone much smarter than I am could explain it better. Yeah. But essentially what you're doing to your body is you're putting it into this like emergency mode. You're telling your body that you're starving, so it's pulling from your fat.
Okay.
It's pulling from your fat storage to give you energy. And I'm not really sure
is it more from the higher fat, or is it more from the caloric restriction that usually comes? Because I believe they say it's like 20% deficit from a caloric deficit most people naturally have when they switch to a ketogenic diet because of the lack of carbohydrates in their diet.
Right. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I'm not 100% sure. But what was fascinating about the ketogenic diet, and what really got me interested in it was why they were using it. They were using it on kids with epilepsy, and they found that it was curing their epilepsy, this ketogenic diet, which was fascinating. And they found some benefits with kids with autism and things like that. And then I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but he worked with the military on ketogenic diet. And
you're talking about the guy that like really pushed it for a long, Don.
Yes. You're on. Yep. Yes. Don something.
Don something. Yeah. Okay.
Fascinating guy,
Right.
and really smart, well-respected scientist.
Yeah.
But I was so fascinated by that. You know, I wanted to know, more about the diet, and I remember there's a ton of controversy behind it because of what, because of what the general diet was pushing prior to this, to completely pull your carbs out and to be on this deficit and
Right.
put your body in this emergency mode was kind of an alarming thing for dietitians and things. It was a really jarring
Well,
diet.
because it was always fats are the enemy.
Exactly.
Fats
Saturated
are the enemy.
fats.
Yeah,
or,
exactly.
all that stuff.
And, so that completely going polar opposite to that,
Right.
and there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there as far as like, big sugar, really pushing that idea, to lower your saturated fats. That's why so many years, like our parents, talk about like, don't have eggs, don't cook with oil. Like all they're doing is like cooking with vegetable oil, which is now we're finding is just completely terrible for you. Right. And just like, so the ketogenic diet, just not for you. It was just not it. And there's some people that feel amazing on the ketogenic diet, and more power to you. I've never tried the ketogenic diet. I've tried a lot of different diets. So now you're on a more whole foods. You found that kind of just more balance, just appropriate amount of carbohydrates. Would you say you're lean in one macronutrient heavier than others, or you stay pretty level amongst all of them?
Well, as of lately, I've been paying more attention to my macros. I wasn't for a while. I was just I was eating sort of an intuitive diet, what felt good to me.
Okay.
And if I was off, then I would just cut that back,
Right.
But lately I've been paying more attention to it. Trying to put on a few pounds, and so obviously I'm trying to make sure that I get my proteins and things like that, and as well as getting all of my fibers and veggies and
right. Those micronutrients in there as well.
Yeah. I try and keep it pretty balanced.
Right.
But I was definitely lacking in proteins. I would eat. Up until very recently, my girlfriend was vegetarian for 10 years.
Right.
So most of our meals would be veggie bowls.
Right.
So they were good.
Yeah.
But I would miss out on a lot of those proteins.
Right.
So I've been paying more attention to that.
That's
lately.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your goal as far as sizing and putting on more weight? Like, do you have a specific like number on the scale, or you just kind of?
Yeah. So I would love to sit at a lean 165.
165.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you at right now?
156.
Yeah.
Pretty light. And with calisthenics, it's good to be light because it's all body
absolutely.
weight.
Yeah.
And
that's why I have such a hard time. My fat ass, it's like 195 pounds. I'm trying to do pull-ups. It's a lot harder. It's a lot harder.
You're much more weight.
Yeah, you're much stronger than I am. And so, I have a lot of excuses why I can't do pull-ups. So
we'll get you there.
Yeah,
we'll get you there.
I would really love some like appropriate like official calisthenics training.
All right.
That'd be good. Maybe you could take me and Aronde through it.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Although
we'll go to
Aronde's
Aronde
Aronde's a beast.
I feel like he would kill it. He'd probably show me up, man.
Dude
that guy just handles shit.
He does. He does. He's a master.
Yeah.
Okay. So man. So what's next? Where you obviously you have your goals with calisthenics, what other things are you working on right now? Because I know you got some other things in the works.
Yeah. Well, I suppose I do have other things in the works, and the thing I'm sort of trying to mesh right now, I'm trying to pull two worlds together. So like I said, I've always leaned towards the artistic side of things and creative side of things. And that's honestly what originally drew me to your brand.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the attention to detail. Like, I loved I know you worked for years, and I saw these things sort of come to life, and this trial and error and back and forth, and you really put time into developing this thing. And I loved that you one pain point I really see in the fitness world in general is just a lack of aesthetic.
Yeah.
Just paying attention to some high quality, like really, really pretty aesthetics, that doesn't really exist. And I love that you're implementing that into your brand.
Thank you.
I really liked that, and that really connected me originally to your brand. And then, the way you handle, your athletes, and the connection, you treat them like people. And I think that's right.
Yeah.
But the worlds that I'm trying to mesh right now is sort of pulling in art into calisthenics. So I've always, been interested in photography and cinematography and things like that. And so, I suppose what's next is basically just finding my lane in the media world for calisthenics. Yeah. And like I said, when I was younger, I would look up, workouts, trying to find workouts, trying to, and you get bits and pieces of things, but there wasn't a lot out there. Right. And there are some people doing it out there, but I don't think it's, I want to be a part of that world. I want to be a part of the movement of calisthenics. I want to be a part of pushing the aesthetic. I want to be a part of, providing value to people who want this.
Right.
I know that there's a need out there. Yeah. And that's.
So where's the pain point in that world?
I think the pain point in that world is really opening up what it takes to become a calisthenics athlete. Yeah. Really step by step. I mean, and what I would eventually love to be doing is, full follow along workouts. Like this is what I do in a day. This is what this looks like, right. And this is where I struggled with, this is how I learned the muscle up. And this is where I struggled with that. These were the parts of this particular move that were difficult for me. And maybe I can help you, progress faster than I did. Okay. And there's not there are some people out there doing it, but it's there's not many. Yeah. And I would love to add my own aesthetic to that.
Yeah, you're still getting into the early, and then you would bring in that more creative, artistic thing that you bring to anything that you do. I mean, I've seen your stuff on Instagram. You and Kelsey have a page together that's unbelievable. If anybody hasn't checked it out, it's Are We Living Yet? And it's a blog and the Instagram profile. What is the main theme as far as like the blogging aspect of it?
So blogging started. Are We Living Yet is more Kelsey's baby on the front end of things.
Yeah, she's much more the face.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you're still on there, but it's majority her.
Yeah. Yeah. So it kind of started as an idea. We decided that we wanted to spend more time traveling, and it's sort of developed into this thing. Yeah. And she works with fashion now, and she's always been really passionate about the fashion world. That's something that she loves. And so we're trying to find our lane in that industry as well. Right. And so a lot of the back end work, just structure and scheduling and making sure that, we are doing what we can to move forward is kind of on me. And she handles a lot of the visuals, a lot of the branding. She's in front of the camera quite a bit, and I'm always taking the photos, and it works out really, really well. I mean,
it's killer content. Like it's really good. Very good.
Yeah.
And then, so I think that's amazing, man. Just keep driving. What are your goals with pushing your brand forward? What are some of the things that you're really working on now?
So right now I'm focusing heavily on content. What does that look like? What I think the most important thing in what I want to do, in everything that I've always wanted to do is why. Why am I doing this? What's the point? And I think that's just a really important question to answer. And where is the pain point, and how can you add your own value? How are you adding value to somebody else's life and what you're doing? And so that's what I'm trying to navigate that right now. I'm trying to navigate what that looks like, what that feels like. I don't want to just repeat what anybody else is doing. I want to create my own thing, and I want to add value in my own way. Yeah. And I'm just baby steps. And right now it's I'm working on the aesthetic. Like, what does it look like? When people walk into this, like, what does that look like to people? Yeah. So that's fun. That's a fun part.
That's an interesting point, because I think a lot of people gloss over that as far as like in any sort of brand, is that they don't take the time to dissect what it's going to look like and feel like, and the immersion of the brand. It took 6 months for me to really hone in and dial in on the brand and aesthetic of ONS. Like, I spent a lot of time with it. And I had multiple friends of mine, entrepreneurs, that are like, why aren't you making shirts yet? Why aren't you making shirts yet? Well, I'm focusing on the brand. I'm focusing on the brand and getting that dialed in, especially as an online store. There's no immersion experience other than your store or your Instagram. People aren't ever interacting with your brand other than in digital. So the brand has to be honed in, really, really dialed in. Yeah. And it sounds like that's where you are in your journey, is honing in on that brand. Yeah. It's good. Yeah. It's really good.
Yeah. I think it's a huge reason why you and I connect.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Absolutely.
We really connect over that. So.
Yeah. No, I've been told that I have a hyper focus as well.
Yeah.
And I definitely, I definitely get your double-edged sword, talk about all of that. But, as far as, ONS, I'm so happy that you're a part of the team. You've been an incredible athlete to work with from day one. The clothing fits you amazing, and you happen to be my mom's favorite model that we've had so far.
Popular with the moms.
You're popular with the moms for sure. Because I was like, Mom, which one's your favorite model? And she's like, oh, the blonde kid,
the blonde boy,
the blonde boy with the tattoos. I was like, the neck tattoo does it for you, huh, Ma? She's like, yeah. She's like, I like him. He's my favorite.
That's good.
And so every time I post a picture of you, she's always like the first one to like comment, nice. I'm like, thanks, Mom.
That's incredible.
That's it.
That's incredible.
But no, like I said, I'm not only excited for your future with ONS, but for where you're going to take your own brand and your calisthenics, and we're gonna do a video.
Yeah, man.
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, I'm honored to be a part of what you're doing, man. Really, thank you,
dude. Awesome.